A Build Hatch developed production.
Hello, I'm Aaron Kyle and welcome to another episode of Build Hatch. On this week's episode, I got to sit down with an old school site manager called Leif Aleksic. Leif works for one of Australia's leading large-scale commercial builders, Built. Leif and his team were nice enough to give me a site tour of their up-and-coming Japanese-themed leading law schools. Leif is the kind of guy who walks around the site involving over 100 workers, and these guys look up to him and respect him. This quality is not easy to find, believe me. What a pleasure it was to hear how this old-school construction professional has worked his way up by showing nothing but hard work and loyalty. This guy is a true champion, and I'm sure you'll enjoy this week's episode. So let's get into it. Leif Aleksic, welcome to Build Hatch.
Thank you very much. Good to be.
Your role today is site manager working for Built, which Built being an Australian Tier 1 construction company.
Tier 1 privately owned, yeah. Yeah, they're a national company. I've been with them for six plus years now. They've been lucky to work right around Australia with them as well. They're a great little business.
Now, like all our guests, we always take it back to the beginning, and before we hear about this really interesting commercial project in the middle of Newcastle, always like to take it back. So whereabouts did you grow up?
Penrith, born and bred, west of Sydney. Sort of grew up there, stayed there up to about 20 years old.
Now that's interesting, you say Penrith, because you have what looks like a really European sounding name.
Yeah, there's plenty of mongrels out our way, as they say, from Penrith. We're very multicultural out that way.
Now this is really exciting. We've got a lot of activity going on in the background, a lot of construction. So obviously you ended up in construction, but growing up at school, did you always set out to get into construction?
I think it was... Coming from Penrith, it's a rugby league town, so obviously the aim was to be a rugby league player. The stars didn't align there, got some pretty bad injuries, and then ended up in the construction industry. Yeah.
So straight out of school, did you play football, or did you?
I was playing a sort of good level of footy there, but then I think a couple of injuries at a young age sort of put a hold on that career. Yeah.
So what did you do? Like, what was your sort of entry point into construction?
It was carpentry. So I did a carpentry apprenticeship, then sort of fell into running projects. I think just having a good mindset and with good dedication to the industry and a passion and a love for it. I ended up loving it.
And that probably comes from rugby league as well, I guess, playing rugby league and having that team environment also.
Absolutely it does. The way I sort of like running my projects is like a team. If the forwards, which I call the structure guys, if they're not pushing it up nice and hard, the finishing guys, the backs can't come in and finish it off towards the end. So it's definitely a very similar attributes to sport and rugby league and the way I look at the construction side as well.
Going through that carpentry apprenticeship, did you start off with like residential or a particular industry like commercial?
I was lucky enough to get in with a smaller company that were working on commercial projects, but when the commercial projects were at the higher end of a fit-out company. And they did a lot of hospitals, schools, that sort of work. Then after years with them, they sort of fell into a sort of leading hand role with Lend-Lease. So sort of did 10 years with Lend-Lease, which was a bit of fun.
So you've been in sort of this commercial Tier 1 sort of construction from the get-go, really?
Pretty much, yep.
So when you first started working for Built, where was that? Was that in Sydney?
No, Perth. I was over in Perth for 15 years, and I was working on a project over there, not for Lend-Lease, and they were just sort of starting off their business in Perth. They'd been there for a couple of years, and then they wanted to get into that sort of bigger project stuff, so they started sniffing around for some candidates to fill those sort of roles and to get them into the bigger construction business over there in Perth.
I think what's surprising, and I think people who look at construction, looking at residential, commercial, and you could nearly break up commercial into industrial or hospitality, medical, like there's so many different industries within those industries. And I think walking on this construction site today, you forget how actually large and dynamic these big construction sites are.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are, and there's a lot going on. It's not like a residential. It's one discipline at a time. Where with a commercial project, there's multiple disciplines at a time. Like you walk onto a site, there's every trade on a construction site. Where residential, it's normally a bricklayer on there, or a framer, and then you'll have a finishing carpenter, and then you'll have one or two plumbers coming in and roughing in a house. So it's like one trade at a time. Where the commercial is it's just a multiple of trades working on top of each other, organised.
Of course. Now, you're a site manager, so how did you fall into that role, like coming up through the ranks? How do you sort of enter that career?
I thought you probably hit the nail on the head there, fell into the role. It was always like the smaller projects as a leading hand. When I say a smaller project, it's probably around the $10 million back in 2000 and around the Olympics and the Olympic Village. And we had a foreman that was looking after a project that was my sort of foreman as a leading hand. He had a sickness that he had to leave, and they needed a hole filled.
So there was an opportunity, it presented itself.
Pretty much.
And you were there ready to take it.
Yeah, sink or swim situation, definitely.
So how many, describe that project, large site?
Olympic Stadium, yeah, it was good fun. But it was definitely an eye-opener. I was only sort of 20 coming out of my time, and the getting off at Strathfield Station and getting a bus out to the Olympic Stadium out at Homebush, that was before the actual train line came out there to the stadium. And
so that was when there was little or no infrastructure.
No,
it was just a cow paddock out there at the time, a bit of a swamp. They turned it around pretty quickly, to get that Olympics going at that time. So it was good, hectic. So how long were you in that sort of site for?
Started there 97. So it was definitely at the peak of what was going on out there as well. There was a lot of work. Obviously the stadium and all the micro stadiums around the area, and the Olympic Village itself, and then you had all the road infrastructure, the train line tunnelling going in. So it was some sort of feat, and hats off to everyone, the government, for organising that in such a short time. They did a good job.
They did. It was a remarkable Olympics.
Yeah.
Now, I think what's interesting with your role, and I started to reflect on my time in construction, in residential and commercial, and working on hospitals and things like that. And I'm the kind of person that I like variety, and I particularly enjoyed residential construction because you were almost changing a new project every maybe 9 months, 12 sometimes, but mostly there was a new project every year where you're signing up like those big infrastructure jobs you're talking about in these tens of millions of dollars of project value. You're committing yourself for years, aren't you?
Yep. Yeah, no, it's 2 years, but there's never a dull day in it. There's definitely something changing every day. It's not like you might not be going to a different address. You might still go to the same address, but there's still a new challenge every day. Every day that you're at work. There's always a plan B, as they say. The plan A, it's very rarely followed, and something's always going to have to change, and you have to just mould with it. So that's the challenge of working in our industry, in that sort of commercial space. That shit happens sometimes.
It does.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think it's that adapting and constant evolving, and probably to think about it, you're probably lucky in some respects where if one part of the project is unable to perform or it's impacted by weather, I mean, you might have that ability to adapt and then work on other areas of the job to keep it progressing?
It depends on where you are on the project. Obviously, if it's early stages of structure, it's difficult for the guys to get out there in the weather, which is understandable. It's a dangerous place as it is, the construction industry, let alone a bit of rain and then slippery under the feet. Those times in the early stages, like the guys will normally take a day off. Good for us to get that planning happening, because they're obviously on the ground with the guys out there on a daily basis, busy, and then you're trying to focus on planning for the next day. It sort of can be a little bit rushed, where if you got those rain days, they're very helpful to reset you for that sort of longer period of planning.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's only, it's 2020, so we've only really got some decent rain this year. But yeah, that's a good way to put it, to use those wet days as a way to regroup, reset and sort of catch up and be able to think ahead instead of chasing your tail all the time.
Yeah, get the guys having a bit of an early mark as well. It's a long day in our industry, in this commercial industry. It's a 6 o'clock start, and that's on the go, and then 6 o'clock finish most nights as well. So it's a long day. Yeah.
And that speaks for itself. I mean, it's 2:30 on a Friday afternoon when we're recording this podcast, and you can hear the activity going on, and there's guys literally running around, they're getting jobs done. So yeah, it's a completely different environment with a completely different energy, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, when you're talking big numbers, for instance, if you got 30 form workers out there and they're not performing, 1 hour of that time, it's big money for a contractor. There's big risk in what they're actually putting on the table to come to work, and then the guys actually understand that as well. They're paid well.
How do you plan for a project like a commercial project like this that's going to take years rather than months, tens of millions instead of millions?
Yeah.
So what's the planning stages like? Are you involved in those early stages?
Look, hats off to the architects and engineers at the forefront of the design. They're doing a lot of that design sort of creativity of getting a bit of a picture. That's what we do. We build the pictures. They're architects' ideas, they're developers' ideas, and they put it on paper, and we build to a pretty picture. Then, obviously, if it's a big enough project, they normally do what they call a early construction investigation, ECI, where it gets a builder involved, buildability, budgeting for the project.
You have to meet certain expectations at that point where, say, built, in your case, you're like a preferred tenderer. So if you're getting tapped on the shoulder at that stage, that's a good sign, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's like anything. You gotta bid for that ECI period as well. Put your best foot forward and show your ability. So there's a lot that goes on with that bid stage, with the tendering process, even just to get on as an ECI on a project. Your past projects and what you've done and your experience all goes towards that sort of merit.
It's like an interview, isn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not a walk in the park.
And it's still not a walk in the park once you've got that in the door. I've seen it plenty of times where, the dollar does count. Disagreements happen, and that's personalities in the industry as well.
As well as the architects and the engineers and the other consultants, like jobs that are, 20, 30, $40 million, there's quantity surveyors who help price things up as well. So how does that work? Like, do they prepare like a separate costing, and then Built does their own internal costing as well?
There is a bit of a bill in quants. There's definitely a a high level of estimating where it's done on a square metre. Like if you took all the pillows and cushions out and just put it back to bare bones, you can nearly put a square metre on the actual build itself. It's when all the finishes and the high end stuff comes into play. That's where your square metre rates will change. That's where you sort of work with your clients and architects to get to budgets. Obviously, they've got that idea and they want that plan, that pretty picture to work. It's to find balance between the budget on the project and that pretty picture. And sometimes they want a Ferrari and they're only willing to pay for that Hyundai, So you got to try and find that middle ground to help them get the project moving. It's in everyone's best interest that the project it works.
And I think you forget too that, so when you see the site fence go up or the hoarding out the front, that looks like it's the start, day one, but before that there's could be even months and years before it even gets out of the ground.
This particular project, it was about 2 years in the making before we even turned a bit of soil on here.
So how early are you in your role as the site manager? How early are you sort of brought into the site and the project?
It depends where we are. Obviously, if we've got a live project and I'm running a live project, I'll hopefully see it to the end. And then there's a bit of a lag between the next project where you can sort of get your head in front of that plan. Yes, we've won the project, or someone's done that ECI period before it, where we've won the project, and then generally these days it's what they call in D&C, so design and construct, where the builder takes on the responsibility of the design. Once they obviously win the bid, successful win that bid, the builder then take on that design as well.
How many projects, say with Built, would be D&C, design and construct, or traditional tender with construction only contracts?
I think it's swinging definitely now towards D&C on the large projects.
And there's a lot of risk associated with that, isn't there?
Absolutely. So all the responsibility then falls back onto the builder. And where before you could sort of say, well, especially for a variation or something like that, you could go to the architect and say, well, you've missed this, and we've tendered on this sort of tender package, and now you want all this extra scope, and you haven't allowed for it. We haven't allowed for it, so you put your hand out. But with the D&C aspect, it's a concept that you're winning the project on. So
yeah, you're definitely playing with the big boys in your area of construction. That's for sure.
Yes, it's good. I mean, it's a way of life. It's definitely not for everyone. The commercial industry. It's definitely hard on the family time. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of travelling, isn't there? And I guess when you're taking on a project, you're committing yourself to that project, preferably from start to finish.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way I see it, and I think I can't remember that classic movie with Mel Gibson. It's like when you're running a project, you're the first person on the ground, and then you're the last person to leave.
Now, Leif, you're a big guy. You mentioned you played rugby league, and you were nice enough to give me a tour of the site, and I love that analogy of, like you said, Mel Gibson in We Were Soldiers. We
were soldiers.
Yeah.
Yep.
First man on the ground, last man off.
That's it. Yeah, no, it's you look at it as not going into war, but you're having that plan every day. Then you're hoping that no one gets injured. We all want everyone to go home safe. It is a dangerous industry that we work in. There's a lot of potentials, as we've seen in the news and everything else. So the definitely number one priority is making sure that no incidents happen that day, right? And everyone's going home over night time.
Yeah, you're like the captain, the captain of the ship, where you're the first guy there, getting the site organised, and you're probably the guy that's on site one of the longest because you're actually establishing that site before the project managers and the rest of the construction team come.
Look, I mean, it's definitely a team effort. It's not just me. Like the foremen that are working on this project, the construction manager, the project manager, our EH&S manager that's on the project. We've got cadets, we've got admin. Let's call a project of this size. We've got a team of around about 10, 12, where there's on a peak of this project, we'll have 200 plus on our. So there's 12 of us from as the builder to 200 plus guys out on. It's a good sort of like war machine inside of a war machine, if you know what I mean by that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it's and look, and there's obviously a hierarchy of what needs to happen on a commercial construction project, and it works well, and it's definitely hard to get a click with the team because you are working long hours and stressful job. It's definitely a challenge sometimes. You know, we can all get under each other's noses a little bit, but at the end of the day, as we keep saying, don't take it personally. Reset the next day. We need to have a little hug out and grab a coffee together and sort it out.
Yeah, I think that's important. Where if you're experiencing conflict or there's a bit of tension, just man up and go have it out, talk about it.
That's it.
And look each other in the eye and get on with it.
Say it like it is, talk with respect.
Yeah.
Look everyone in the eye, and it goes a long way, and it helps for a successful project if everyone's open and transparent about it.
What other qualities do you need to have to be a good site manager?
Absolutely, you just have to get along with everyone.
Because you're like the meat in the sandwich in your role, aren't you? You've got people above and, like you said, 200 people underneath reporting to you.
Yeah, you sort of, it's like the kindergarten teacher, I suppose. You know, you've got the principal telling you how to do things, and then you've got the guys down there that you're trying to you teach, and make sure that they're doing the right thing. And that's with everyone that works on that building side and that building team. We're sort of, like you said, that meat in the sandwich, yeah. Yeah.
Now, what's it like having management on site and working with those guys? Like, what sort of, I guess, level of detail do you go into with planning and having a program? Like, yeah, what's involved with that?
So obviously there's an initial program that we win a project time frame on. So we might say, let's call this project $40 million project. We'd say we can start on this date and finish on that date. So let's call it 14 months. That's a big part of winning a project is the program and how you think you can actually, and the time frame that you can build that project in.
So that's basically a pretty critical success point in not only bidding for the project but delivering the project, and because time is money.
Well, yeah, and this is where you sort of rely on that senior management having the knowledge of previous projects and not going too silly with the deadlines, and making it a bit more realistic rather than the winning a job saying we're going to do it in that amount of time and it's unrealistic. So that's where that planning starts, is with the guys that are obviously bidding on that work to make sure that it's realistic for the time frames that are on the job. The big thing about the construction industry now, I think, is quality. Quality comes hand in hand with safety, and I think not one of them supersede each other. If you get the quality right, the safety comes easy. If you get the safety right, the quality comes easy.
Yeah, I like that because they're hand in hand.
They are.
And it's a bit like that old saying of a neat and tidy work area is a productive one.
Yep.
And then it goes without saying, as you said, it's you walk that path together in safety and productivity and quality and the whole lot.
It all just comes together.
It just gels, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like one of the fundamental tools I say to all the guys out there is a broom. You know, like every morning you want to come to a workplace that's clean, tidy, and neat and organised. And that number one tool is your broom, yourself and the broom, and then your tools come out after that, and then the broom comes out at the end of the day, the last tool, and it keeps the site clean. Or if you come on and you walk onto a nice clean site, you walk with your head a little bit higher rather than with your head down, looking for that where am I going to trip over next because it's a shit fight and I don't know where to go.
That's right, and I like that and that comes down to having some pride in your work area and managing those relationships. And
and setting the standard straight away. You know, look, each commercial project and tier of builder comes with a different standard. I think when you start coming into a tier 1, tier 2 builder, the standard and the bar's set up a little bit higher. So it's educating these guys to step it up. Just a little reminder to step it up to that number 2 or number 1 again. You're not down at that sort of lesser tier builder. Not to say that lesser tier builder is not doing the right thing. It's just
it's a big step up though, isn't it?
It's a big difference between a sort of tier 3, tier 4 to a tier 1, tier 2.
Yeah, and I think that's important to look at that in a broad context where we're not talking about quality or money, like just the enormous and gigantic step that you have to step up in terms of your standards, your safety, your systems in place. Looking around in this site today, there's a screen up in this meeting room where the guys, I presume, sit down here and, you know, it talks about working on a built site. Remember, if everyone talks to each other, takes responsibility, shows respect, everything will be safer, easier, better, and built worthy. And yeah, I really like that built worthy. I think that's very clever.
No,
simple but clever.
Yeah, no, it's good. Definitely a good philosophy with sort of our culture stuff that we're trying to bring through with the guys on site. And I think getting that culture set up right from the start. One of the things we do on our projects now is we get all our structure crew in a room, and we say, right, boys, you guys are building it. We're just here just to make sure that you're all here building it correctly. But how can you do it better? How can you guys work all together and make this place an enjoyable place to come and work, and something that you can come back and say, I built that and it was a great job.
Yeah, I'd imagine, I mean, I have the same feeling as well, but particularly you seeing something that you've been a part of for 2 years or maybe even longer, 3 years, must be very satisfying knowing that I looked after that job.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely one of the great things about being involved in the construction industry, especially commercial. They're generally commercial buildings that are around cities or larger sort of communities where they're going to be around for a long time, and communities get involved with the projects, and there's always talk about it. There's definitely, with a project like this with like state significance and being a heritage and it's a university, it comes with the media attraction as well. And it's a bit of a thrill at the end of a project once it all goes well, and it's a successful project and everyone's done well out of it. You always reflect back on those projects, and you sort of get that final beer, like that grand final beer, as they say.
So true. We're recording this podcast inside the Nihon University, which is in Newcastle CBD. So if you could describe this project, how would you describe it?
Look, it's a one-off. It's got a combination of heritage building with the new sort of student accommodation, and and lecture rooms and study rooms, and being a Japanese university, they've got little zen areas as well for the Japanese students coming over here. So this project's definitely a one, and not many around Australia that we're lucky and built are really good at. We do that stuff that no one else likes doing. It's like really dirty, hands-on work.
Stepping up for the challenging site.
That's it.
And like some of the challenge, this has heritage significance.
Oh, this is absolute heritage. It's state significant.
So it's that top level of heritage
that's it.
value that requires all of these increased protection measures and preservation means.
And you got the added stuff in Newcastle with the mine subsidence as well. So there's a lot of in a building where you think, it's been standing for 140 years. Why are we putting all this extra strengthening in there? But obviously, mine subsidence and Australian standards these days say that when you're doing this sort of refurb work, you need to bring it up to a certain code. So
now, for the people that are listening to this and thinking, well, what's mine subsidence? Like, I guess Newcastle and the Hunter area is well known around the world for its coal mining days and its heritage. Now, when you're building with mine subsidence, what are we dealing with on a typical site like this?
Look, there's actually two voids of mine subsidence on this particular site we're working on here. So what they call the Dudley seam, where it was back where the guys were just chipping away with the old pick and crawling around and with the bucket and sending it back on a rope. And there's that down at about 30 metres. And they're sort of rogue. There was no real mappings on them. It's sort of just drill through the ground and see if you hit one. And they generally, what we found here with the ones that we found, that they had collapsed. So being 30 metres down, it hasn't really affected anything. But not knowing what size voids they are, and potentially if they are big voids, they could have detrimental effects on the new building.
And these are old voids from, I don't know,
convict
1800s, 1900s.
No, definitely 1800s. It's back around the convict time. So.
And they're just digging these old workings. They're not mapped that well. Some are, otherwise they're just
they're ghost stories. That's the only way. I mean, when we first got into this project, there's a pub called the Grand across the road there, and there was an old myth that there was a tunnel from the courthouse where we're working now to the under the road and up into the old Grand Hotel. Yeah. So
a little private access.
We didn't find that little void, unfortunately.
That's funny. All right, so I guess this particular project, it's a mixture of refurbishment and new construction. So how long do you envisage yourself being here for, roughly speaking?
Look, we started saying December last year. So, December, construction industry, nothing really happens. It's just slow. A bit of a slow start. We sort of ramped it up in January, and look, we're anticipating to start in June, July. All depends on what happens with the COVID and whatever else is going on in the rest of the world. And but yeah, no, we're still going to obviously push for our target of June, July next year. But again, as I said, who knows what the current circumstances bring with our industry. You look at Melbourne at the moment. They're in a world of pain.
Challenging times.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your, I guess, looking back now on when you first started, you came out of that sort of football team environment, entered the construction industry. What's your favourite sort of highlight looking back now? Not that it's over or anything.
Construction industry?
Yeah.
Look, I think it's a combination of them all. I've been lucky. I've worked, I spent 4 years in the UK working on some pretty significant. You look at this building and it's built in 1890, I think it was, and I got to work on projects over there, 1600s. and that's a significant sort of change from
That's a huge step up.
200. But you look at the way they built things back then, they weren't much different to what they built back in the early 90s. The industry's definitely changed with the construction technology that's come into it now, and architecture, and how that's all changed, and the materials that we can use now. We're looking at a project in Sydney at the moment, timber construction, 40 stories.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can see where the technology, and who would have thought a 40-story building, 40 stories up, made out of timber.
I think I read about that. They were the boys from Atlassian.
That's it.
Yeah, nothing seems to be a limit for those
No,
guys.
No, money's obviously not too much of a problem for them either.
They're having a go.
Yeah.
And you were nice enough to give me as I said earlier, you were nice enough to give me a tour before, and I couldn't help but notice those old, because this is an old courthouse, there's these dungeons or convict quarters downstairs. So that's pretty interesting, isn't it?
No, it was, yeah. No, I thought, I remember when we first sort of got onto this project, little whispers that you hear, just having a quiet one with the publican over the road, and the stories, he's been over there for 20 years, he's a proper old publican, old school sort of, you sit at the bar and you have a talk with the guy, and he'll tell you a story, and he'll tell us a few stories about the bad guys that came through here and got out of their sentence, or got off their sentence, and straight over the pub. Straight over the pub. Yeah.
I bet they were thirsty.
Oh yeah. I know it's like I said, but it's a project that's it's a one-off, or there's not many of them around Australia, and it's good, fair dues to the Japanese University that's bought this premises. They're restoring that history. Like we can't build like they built back in those days. It just doesn't happen anymore.
It doesn't, and you're right. It's incredible to be able to preserve a site like this and mix the old with the new and make it a multifunctional space. And with your role having the long-term impact on this project and seeing it from start to finish, I think it'd be a really rewarding feeling when it's finally done.
Definitely, cracker. Yeah, no, it's good. Can't wait.
All right, Leif. Well, I really appreciate you giving up your time, particularly with the guys from Built allowing this to happen. And we'll put some shots up on our Instagram, and I'm sure your story will inspire a lot of people. And I think the biggest thing to reflect on is just, even though we have this large, forever changing and adapting construction industry, it comes back to the basic people skills and walking around the site, seeing you walk around and there's 100 guys on this side, and saying g'day Leif, or how you going. Like, it's an important skill to have, but it's good. It's refreshing to know that it comes back to good old basic people skills.
That's it. Good knowledge of the industry as well. It comes in time. It takes years to get that sort of knowledge and that camaraderie with the boys. It's another language, the construction industry. It really is.
It is, and keeping your mind open and learning and letting the guys do their job, I think it's really special. So thanks again, Leif. Really appreciate your time, and thank you.
Appreciate it.
Well, as you can tell by my conversation with Leif, he's a top bloke and loves his job, being the first guy on site and the last to leave. As usual, please check out our Instagram, where you'll be able to learn more about our guests and the features of their projects that we talk about. Have a great week, and you'll hear me again on the airwaves next week. Thanks for listening to another episode of Build Hatch.
You have experienced a Build Hatch developed production.